Oh, good morning. I got my El Rudo shirt on today. And man, I'm still just not myself. I'm finna pop that Sudafed, bro. Brother. And I just, I don't know, man. I gotta really do something. I have not had allergies this bad in a long time, brother. And my dang thing is not showing in the thing of the thing. Only got, oh well. I need a dang, I need a dang new window. Oh, surprise. Average IQ. Massachusetts is number one. We need to move to Massachusetts. Um, there we go. Okay, I just want to get my comic book back up. Man, I'm telling you right now, this let's stop it. Start it from the beginning. And this is a day. The the lights, man, it's awful. Now I got two HD monitors behind me and native HDMI. And get this, they were $2.50 each. Well, okay, one of them is no, it's not. They're both HDMI. That's crazy. 1920 by 1080 monitors are like turning up in the thrift stores, like because I mean people are going 4K, man. What the hell? So, man, if you good things come to those who wait. But hold on, man. Let me go. Intermission. So yeah, I just wanted to change my background so it would be something cool. I wish it would be, spaceships floating and stuff in the galaxies and things, but it's not. I'm gonna have to do some work to get that. I am trying to find my mind. And I guess, it's just, yeah, it's really, it's really scary, when you get, the thing is I haven't had allergies for like 2 years. And I think it's something related to bread. I really do. Because that's the only thing I changed my diet is I started eating bread again, pretty much. Also a certain type of noodle that I've been eating. That's something I should consider about. But, man, you really appreciate how damaging it is. If you if you had allergies, like I was starting to get them worse and worse every year. And then, as I got older, and then, when I changed my diet, man, they went away. I didn't have them at all. And I was bragging about it this year. This was going into like the 4th year or something that I had not been experiencing allergies because of dietary changes. But my dietary proprietary has been violationalized behind it because, man, it's like the day after I was bragging about it, man, hit me like a ton of bricks. Telling you what. Let's go in here and do our little labors. I need to send this. I hate gambling. This is a gambling machine, this game, so I should get off of it. Breaks my heart, man. That's a turning point of life when they started playing games. And what did he play? He plays some Plarium. Let's see. I guess I'm getting ready to jump in here. Why am I not feeling it? Let me see who's out here. FU2? Yeah. Let's invite both these guys. I'm gonna try one more time, because it seemed like both these guys had asked me to have some battles with them, so we'll see. Pantera, that's Jesus Daddy. Just when you thought it was going to be boring, you get Jesus Daddy. Jesus' Daddy. Is that how you say it? Jesus's Daddy. I was not looking where I was shooting just then. I was just hoping I could get out the way. No. I hate you. I hate you going around the corner and stuff. Better stay back. Oh man. Hard to kill. That was weird, man. I really expected to die. Oh, you mad now, ain't you? Child? Man, why you sneak up behind me like that, man? That's so rude. Oh. I had it coming. I was not looking. I am a Freakazoid, in a Freakazoid mood, I tell you. Get out my way, I'm trying to shoot her. Come on, man, get your behind out from behind there, creepy. I don't like them in this far. Who let them get all the way up here? Taste my stasis beam. Man, y'all know it. Up in my nostrils. We was whipped by Jesus's daddy. That's those heavy metal kids. Yeah, for some people don't know that, but like back in the like right after Jesus was crucified, there were people going down saying, "What's the deal with this?" Is saying that he's the Son of God, and no, he's not, because we know who his daddy was. It was she fooled around with Pantera, right? So what is it? Tiberius Pantera was a Roman standard bearer, and she got pregnant with him, right? And so this is a new thing with it's a way of calling yourself God, since it's like a backhanded joke, because Jesus was supposed to be the son of God, right? So since Jesus is, according to history, the son of Tiberius Pantera, Pantera is a way of calling yourself God when you're a man. Kind of a cool name. Okay. I don't even know what his even is. Let's see. 16 control points. I need to get lower help. What are you doing with those mines? They're so stupid. They're not gonna walk there. They're gonna walk on the thing. And also, they're not gonna be back there that quick. Why are you doing that? You turkey, you was hiding back there, a little sniper. Snipity snipey. Fool. Yeah, there he go. That was a mistake going after him. Should have had. Well, no, I don't want to ignore him. They're killing us. We're dead. got us all pinned down back here. All these guys. Come on, y'all. What are you standing back here for? Taking a dang donut break? Oh! Sucker. I hate that Helix rack and his... Man, that 41,000? I guess that's enough. I guess it's my lack of experience. He's back there the whole damn time. I can't make it. Yeah, he's sat back there the whole damn game. Definitely a good spot for a Helix rack. Where could I go? I'm thinking... Curious.
They allowed him to move to Frankfurt, where the election of the next emperor took place. The other electors ended up voting for him unanimously on the 28th of August. While he gained the title of emperor, however, he had already lost the title of King of Bohemia. On the 31st of July 1619, the 5 Bohemian provinces formed the Bohemian Confederation. Despite a lot of dissenting voices, the Upper and Lower Austrian Protestant radicals joined them as allies on the 16th of August. On the 19th of August, the Bohemians formally rejected Ferdinand as king, claiming that his ascent to the throne in 1617 had been unconstitutional and that he was never officially their monarch. But Bohemia was set up as a kingdom that needed a king to retain its power within the Holy Roman Empire. The obvious choice for a king would have been the Duke of Saxony, leader of the major Protestant power in Germany, but he was not interested. He just acted as if he might accept the offer, believing he could make the Bohemians join peace talks that he wanted to lead. Another candidate that was considered was Carlo Emanuele of Savoy, who had sponsored the mercenaries under Mansfeld. But he was a Catholic, and when the Austrians found out that he paid for Mansfeld's men, he quickly changed course and offered his services to Ferdinand. The 2 remaining candidates were Gabor Bethlen, Prince of Transylvania, and Frederick V, Count Palatine. Bethlen wanted a royal title as a means of consolidating his country's endangered independence. At first, he seemed ideal, until he quickly lost influence in Prague when it became clear that the Habsburgs had convinced the Ottomans not to back his efforts to become king in Hungary. Without the Ottoman backing, and without the Hungarian crown, he was not as intimidating. The only option left was Frederick V. He was elected King of Bohemia by the grace of God and the Estates on the 26th of August. Much was expected of the young king of only 23 years of age. He should unify the Protestants and bring in some much-needed international support. However, the most likely source of aid, the Protestant Union, only raised troops to deter Catholic reprisals, not to march to Bohemia or to support Frederick. Moreover, there were internal quarrels among the Protestants. Frederick didn't understand some of the complexities of Bohemian Protestantism. When, for example, he tried to prohibit material representations of the supernatural in Calvinist fashion, he was fiercely opposed by Bohemian Protestants. This in turn enraged the Palatine Calvinists, who destroyed medieval artworks, paintings, and saints' tombs in St. Vitus Cathedral at Christmas of 1619. This didn't exactly make Frederick popular with the local population and hindered his efforts to recruit a substantial army a great deal. To make matters worse, there was no additional international support. The Dutch actually stopped their subsidies and only allowed Frederick to recruit 2 regiments from men in their service. The English King James, related to Frederick by the latter's wife, also didn't substantially support the Bohemians. He only offered himself as arbiter, not as a proper ally. Ambassadors and talks, instead of powder and guns. The Danes and Swedes remained idle too. Soon Europeans started joking that Frederick would be saved by the Danes, who would send 1,000 pickled herrings, the Dutch, who would supply 10,000 boxes of butter, and James, who would dispatch 100,000 ambassadors. Because of these internal quarrels and sparse international support, the Bohemians were lacking funds. Their hope increasingly shifted to Gabriel Bethlen, the Calvinist prince of Transylvania. Bethlen wanted to become King of Hungary, another title held by Ferdinand II. So Frederick and Bethlen certainly had a common enemy. But there was a huge misunderstanding between the two. Bethlen hoped that the broke Frederick would give him the funds to pay for his constantly under-financed army of mostly irregular cavalry. He needed a quick success, both to convince the Hungarian Diet to reject Ferdinand and elect him king, and to gain support by the Ottomans. Very quickly, Bethlen prepared an offensive and soon arrived in Pressburg with his army. He was very successful. Garrisons along the military frontier declared for him, leaving only Komorn, Raab, and Neutrath loyal to the Habsburgs. In November, Bethlen arrived at the walls of Vienna, encircling the city with 42,000 men. The emperor, however, made it into the city in time, ready to defend his capital. But his overall situation wasn't exactly optimal. Luckily for him, Bethlen had to abandon his blockade of Vienna because of a Polish attack on his Transylvanian core territory. The attack on Transylvania was of course a result of long negotiations between the Habsburgs and the Polish king and Lithuanian Grand Duke Sigismund III. Sigismund was as stout a Catholic as Ferdinand himself, and was the obvious choice for an ally. Moreover, his wife was Ferdinand's sister. She championed a pro-Habsburg stance in Poland. In fact, the two had made an agreement to help each other in case of rebellion in 1613. However, Sigismund was disappointed with how little support he had gotten when Sweden invaded Livonia in 1617. We made an entire series about the Polish-Swedish wars if you want to dive deeper into that topic. But to keep things short, Sigismund had a dynastic claim to Sweden, which was challenged by Charles of Sweden. The two states fought over this dynastic dispute and the control of the economically vital cities around the Baltic shore for many years. For now, the Swedes were kept at bay, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had just finished a war with the Tsars of Russia in 1618, which pushed the border of the Commonwealth to its greatest extent. Sigismund was strong and in a position to help the Habsburgs. But he wanted to do that without committing himself to a long war that would distract from his primary objective of recovering Sweden. So he simply redirected the so-called Light Cossack cavalry, who had fought for him in Russia and were currently plundering the borderlands of the Ottoman Empire towards Bethlen's Transylvania. These cavalrymen have entered history under the name Lizovchitse, named after their commander Alexander Lizovsky. The historian Peter Wilson aptly notes that, quote, "The Lizovsky were the kind of cavalry that God would not want and the devil was afraid of," end quote. A force of about 7,000 men under the Upper Hungarian magnate and personal enemy of Bethlen, György Homonai, was sent into Transylvania to wreak havoc. Homonai defeated the Transylvanians in a battle after they had misinterpreted a fake retreat as a real one. The 30 Years' War wouldn't be a, quote, extremely complex conflict, end quote, as Peter Wilson puts it, if there wasn't another twist to this situation. The incursion into Transylvania called the Ottoman Movement. They thought of Bethlen as their client, and did not want him to be driven off Transylvania, especially not by the Polish. Considering that the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Ottoman Empire had recently fought for influence and territory in Moldavia in the Moldavian Magnate Wars, tensions were running high anyways. Because the Ottomans had just made peace with the Persians in the east, they had now ample resources for their western interests. In October 1620, the Sultan sent the Tatars, backed by Ottoman regulars, into Moldavia where they routed a Polish force at Zecora. In the following year, Sigismund's army would entrench at Hotin and repel a force of Tatars and Turks almost twice its size. We also made a separate video about this event. Although this bound all of the Commonwealth's capacities, so that they couldn't really interfere in Bohemia, the intervention in Transylvania was a success. Bethlen was forced to abandon the siege of Vienna and signed an 8-month truce with Ferdinand. Meanwhile, Sigismund prohibited the Lisowskis to enter Poland and sent them along the mountains to Silesia to reinforce Bucua. There, they helped to push the Habsburg offensive towards Krems over the summer of 1690. Meanwhile, Thurn's Confederate forces were entrenched around Langenlois, where Christian of Anhalt arrived to take command. In July, Mehmed Aga, an Ottoman emissary, reached Prague to deliver the Sultan's congratulations on Frederick's coronation. He wanted to see where the defenestration had taken place and promised Bohemia 60,000 Ottoman auxiliaries. Most people in Prague were rather uncomfortable with the presence of an official Ottoman delegation within their city walls, but their leaders were easily seduced by the idea of a grand alliance that could smash both Poland and the Habsburgs. In a letter to the Sultan, Frederick agreed to make Bohemia a tributary state of the Ottoman Empire in exchange for assistance. Frederick sent a delegation with 70,000 florins in bribes to Constantinople and promised 300,000 florins to Bethlen. With growing support and financial backing, allegedly secured, Bethlen seized control of the Hungarian Diet at Neusohl in August of 1620 and was crowned King of Hungary only 12 days later, although many Hungarians didn't agree with the election and declared for the Habsburgs. In the face of 3 hostile forces, Hungary under Bethlen, Bohemia under Frederick, and the prospect of Ottoman involvement, the Habsburg monarchy was at the verge of collapse. To make matters worse, they were about 20 million florins in debt, while the crown revenue was only 2.4 million. The imperial army alone consumed 5 million florins in pay, provisions and munitions from the beginning of the war to June 1619. Even Spanish and papal subsidies came in only at just around 3 million and provided little help. Overall, the military deficit was about 4.3 million florins, in addition to the monarchy's already existing debt. It was clear that Ferdinand needed substantial help if he wanted to get out of this mess alive. So he knocked on the doors of Spain, France and the Papal States and tried to deter the Protestant Union from intervening. Moreover, he asked both Bavaria and Saxony to provide direct military support. Now, Bavaria, or more specifically Maximilian of Bavaria, one of the major players of the 30 Years' War, enters the stage. For a long time, he had had ambitions to improve his political situation in the empire. Maximilian was related to Frederick V, who, besides the kingship of Bohemia, was also holding the electoral vote for the Palatinate. Given the pressure the emperor was under, Maximilian saw an opportunity to negotiate a transfer of the electoral vote of the Palatinate to Bavaria, if he were to support Ferdinand against Frederick at the right time and in the right way. Maximilian had been carefully plotting since 1618, even refusing calls for help by Ferdinand while quietly preparing to re-establish the Catholic League, the counterweight to the Protestant League, so to speak, usually just called Liga. Frightened by the Protestant rebellion in Bohemia, the former members of the Liga welcomed the chance to strengthen their security. Maximilian secured himself the exclusive direction of the Liga's military affairs and managed to get Johann Czeklas Tilly, an experienced commander, to take on the role of field commander of the Liga forces. This created a counterweight to the Habsburg-controlled imperial forces, which de facto were led by Bavaria. In January, Ferdinand annulled Frederick's election as Bohemian king. An ultimatum was made to give the crown back, which ran out in June. 5 days later, Ferdinand authorized Maximilian to intervene in Bohemia. Maximilian was a cautious man and waited until both Spain and the papacy endorsed his actions. Especially Spain's aid was crucial, because Maximilian could not safely move against the Austrian and Bohemian confederates without exposing the Liga territories to potential reprisals from the Protestant Union forces. Spanish intervention on the Rhine should keep the Protestants busy in the west, while freeing up the Liga army under the command of Count of Tilly to turn eastwards. At the same time, smaller Spanish contingents started marching from the Netherlands to Passau and from Italy via the St. Gotthard Pass to Bohemia. Moreover, in July, the Liga and Protestant Union agreed on a truce, promising not to fight each other in Germany, leaving Maximilian free to intervene in Bohemia while the Protestants could oppose the Spanish. The Habsburg, Liga, Bavarian, Spanish, Saxon offensive involved 6 armies. Dompierre had to hold Vienna against Bethlen. Bucquoy moved with the Habsburg main force to Lower Austria to move against Anhalt. Maximilian left a force in the Upper Palatinate and moved with the Bavarian main army under the command of Tilly to Upper Austria. Spain invaded the Lower Palatinate and Saxony moved against Lusatia. Upper and Lower Austria quickly collapsed and abandoned the Bohemian Confederation without a single battle, allowing Tilly and Maximilian to join Bucquoy in Lower Austria. Meanwhile, Louis de Velasco deterred the Dutch Republic with 80,000 men, while Spinola invaded Palatine territory west of the Rhine, taking Kreuznach and Alzey. To make matters worse, the main Bohemian army had been paralyzed by 3 pay mutinies and only became active again after the 2nd of August. By this time, Maximilian had joined Bucquoy, which meant the Catholics now substantially outnumbered the Bohemians. Von Anhalt, the Protestant commander, retreated into Moravia, expecting the Catholics to follow him. But Ferdinand and Maximilian followed Tilly's advice and marched directly towards Prague. On their march, the men plundered and pillaged along the way, whilst being plagued by a sickness referred to as Hungarian fever, probably a form of typhus or cholera. It is often said that the 30 Years' War got worse and worse in terms of brutality over time. Even though this is probably true, it is often forgotten that both frequent death at the hands of sicknesses and terrible brutality were present from the outset. 12,000 Catholics died because of the fever before the end of the year, and the Imperial Bavarian troops, Catholics themselves mind you, plundered Catholic monasteries and convents as well as Protestant homes on their way through Austria to Prague. Meanwhile, Anhalt realized his mistake and raced west towards Tabor. By then, the Imperial Bavarian army had already entered Budweis, simply bypassed him in the west, and arrived near Pilsen on the 27th of September. So Anhalt moved to Rokycany and then to Rakovnik, where he dug in. The Imperial Bavarian army didn't attack his position and remained idle. But Tilly, knowing the campaign season was coming to an end, again asserted himself over the other generals, and pushed the army to bypass Anhalt around the ridge and race towards Prague on the 5th of November. Anhalt again had to admit to a mistake and force-marched his men towards Prague, overtaking the Imperial Bavarian army. He arrived at the White Mountain, about 8 kilometers west of the city at midnight on the 7th of November. The White Mountain, Bílé hory in Czech, is rather a ridge than a mountain, and takes its name from the white chalk and gravel pits in the region. It runs northeast to southwest for about 2 kilometers, rising only about 60 meters from the surrounding area. Nonetheless, it would be a strong defensive position if it were defended by a competent and motivated army, especially at the northern end where the incline was steepest. The end of the ridge was covered by a wooded game park featuring a small wall and containing the Star Palace, a small pavilion where Frederick and his wife stayed prior to their triumphal entry to Prague a year earlier. In addition, the Sharka, a marshy stream, ran through the fields about 2 kilometers in front of the Protestant position, but it was deemed too far from the hill to be defended. When Anhalt arrived there, he didn't really expect a battle. He thought the enemy would just stall like before at Rakovnik. Despite this, he arrayed his 21,000 men in 3 lines according to the Dutch manner. That means he deployed his men in small infantry battalions that relied on good discipline and firepower to deter enemies from closing in, while pikemen would step up in case of enemy cavalry attacks. Between the infantry, he had his cavalry in small squadrons, while the light cavalry was positioned in a 3rd line. Frederick himself remained in Prague to eat breakfast, and wasn't with his men at all. The Catholics had the prospect of plundering Prague if they won, a rich city that was well worth the fight. Additionally, the men were tired of chasing the Bohemians around their country, and winter was closing in, which might shift the balance of power in the Protestants' favor. So Tilly asserted himself again and pushed for decisive action. Thick fog obscured the Imperial Bavarian advance on the morning of the 8th of November. They drew up in a Spanish manner, in so-called tercios, positioning 17,000 infantry in 10 big blocks of pikemen, which had the advantage of fostering the morale, but limited firepower because the formation had less width. While 12 pieces of artillery sang their thunderous song throughout the morning with little effect, they proved at least useful in signaling the start of the battle 15 minutes after midday. The Bavarians had more ground to cover to reach the ridge than the Imperials, so the two armies would make contact first on the Imperial Bavarian right. Anhalt quickly sent 2 cavalry regiments down the hill to drive off the Imperial cavalry, who were screening the tercios that spearheaded the assault, while Turn's regiment moved down to engage the enemy infantry. But Turn's men saw their own cavalry retire early, and consequently only fired 1 salvo at extreme range before they fled the field right away. Anhalt's son tried to save the situation by charging his horsemen head-on into the tercio moving up the slope, and for a brief moment it looked like the Protestants might yet stand a chance. But shortly after, more Imperial horses came up and Bourgeois arrived to rally the infantry. Within an hour since the start of the battle, Anhalt Jr. was taken prisoner, and all of the Bohemian horsemen were fleeing. The infantry soon joined them, with only some units near the Star Palace resisting for about another half hour before surrendering. The Imperial Bavarian army suffered a mere 650 casualties, mostly to Anhalt Jr.'s brave yet futile charge. The Bohemian Confederates, in contrast, left 600 dead on the field, with a further 1,000 strewn the way to Prague, as well as 1,200 wounded. Prague had substantial defenses, and it would have been no problem to hold the city over the winter. But the Bohemian Confederate leadership was utterly pathetic. While some tried to organize a defense on the Charles Bridge to stop the Bavarians from crossing the river, Anhalt, in turn, thought the situation hopeless. Frederick and his pregnant wife joined the stream of refugees leaving the city eastwards. They left the crown, other insignia, and confidential documents behind because they feared that angry citizens might prevent them from escaping if they took these royal symbols with them. The city, full of riches, was abandoned and left to plunder. On the other side of the theatre of war, Bethlen had pushed to Prespech, but was stopped by Dompierre, supported by some Hungarians and Austrians. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Sultan, who had actually already ratified the alliance with Frederick, was happy that he didn't intervene on the ground when he heard of the poor display at White Mountain. At the same time, the Ottoman Pasha of Buda seized the Hungarian border fortress of Weizen, which made it clear to most Hungarians that they needed Ferdinand, not Bethlen, to properly protect them. Frederick's involvement as the Count Palatine carried the war to the Palatinate, more specifically the Lower Palatinate near the Rhine. This brought the conflict within striking distance of the Spanish road, the most crucial means of supporting the Spanish troops in the Netherlands. And guess what? The 12 years truce between Habsburg Spain and the Netherlands that had paused the 80 Years' War was just about to run out. All eyes were on the vital Spanish road. Not only would this bring the true military giant of the time, the Spanish Habsburgs, dangerously close to intervening in the conflict in Germany, but it also dragged in England, France, parts of Italy, Denmark, and Sweden. The 30 Years' War was about to get a whole lot bigger. Germany really was the powder keg ready to explode. A catastrophic defeat of the Protestant forces in the first major battle of the 30 Years' War at White Mountain in 1620 effectively ended the Bohemian Revolt. Just a few days later, placards appeared in Brussels and Vienna offering a reward for news of, quote, a king run away a few days past, height medium, no beard or mustache worth mention, disposition not so bad as long as a stolen kingdom does not lie in his way, name of Frederick. The placards refer to Frederick V, Count Palatine, loser of the battle at White Mountain, but arguably still king of Bohemia. Now he was a fugitive, mocked as the Winter King, after the brevity of his reign. Yet despite his situation, Frederick was reluctant to give in. His involvement in the 30 Years' War brought the conflict to the Palatinate, the Lower Palatinate along the Rhine to be precise. This territory, including the city of Heidelberg, was associated with the title of Count Palatine, who was one of the 7 prince-electors of the Holy Roman Empire and held the power to elect the emperor. So far, the war had been about the crown of Bohemia, also an electorate, but now the electoral power of the Count Palatine was at stake. This geographic shift towards Western Germany brought the conflict within the sphere of influence of the Spanish Empire, as their most important means to bring troops to the Netherlands, the so-called Spanish Road, ran dangerously close to the Palatinate territory. In addition, the 12 years truce between the Dutch Republic and the Spanish Empire was running out just now. In the end, the war in the Palatinate and how the Habsburgs handled it would both alienate Protestants in Germany and internationalize the conflict, bringing in most of the major powers of Europe. In this video, we will look at what is referred to as the Palatinate phase of the 30 Years' War. This phase is crucial to understand why the war exploded from a local conflict in Bohemia to a, quote, European catastrophe and German trauma, as the German professor of political theory, Herfried Münkler, aptly calls it. Before we go any further, I'd like to recommend the documentary Janissaries, An Army of Slaves, which you can check out for free on Magellan TV, the sponsor of this video. The documentary provides great background for our series on the 30 Years' War because the Ottoman Empire truly is one of the great powers of the 17th century, but gets usually overlooked in narratives about this conflict, since the focus is mostly on Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy. Documentaries like the Janissaries help you understand what happened on the other side of the theatre of war, or in this case, how the Ottoman elite infantry was trained and equipped, and how they fought very differently from their European counterparts. In almost all conflicts, the Janissaries played a vital role. They were usually the first to charge into a breach during a siege or spearheaded assaults in battles. Magellan TV's episode on the Janissaries is part of a larger series called Ancient Warriors, which includes the Spartans as well as the Scottish Highlanders or the South African Zulus. Magellan TV offers over 3,000 other documentaries and is always ad-free. Please use the link in the description below this video to sign up. Our viewers get a 1-month free trial by using this link.
We have to show America that Hitler can be outfought.
I'm not leaving until I have a barrel full of Nazi hearts.
By spring of 1621, Frederick had fled from Prague to Berlin to The Hague, where he now lived in exile with the Winter Queen, Elizabeth Stuart, daughter to the English King James I. His position was miserable. He and his military leaders were outlawed because they were all placed under the imperial ban sometime after January 29, 1621. The Protestant Union, Frederick's likeliest source of help, didn't renew its charter in May of 1621, so that the organization was basically abandoned. Gabor Bethlen, Frederick's most important ally, was at stalemate with the Habsburg general Bucquoy in Hungary and had little prospect of victory. For a closer look at the causes of this situation, we suggest you have a look at our previous 2 videos of this series covering the outbreak of the war and the Bohemian Revolt. Last but not least, international support for Frederick was, if anything, essentially restricted to promises and talk. The Protestant King of Denmark did convene a conference in March of 1621 with James I, the Dutch, Frederick, and the major German Protestants all present. However, all their troops were only raised to defend their own lands, not to support Frederick. This Protestant attempt at solidarity was doomed to fail because the major powers were all at cross purposes. Sweden refused to participate at all. Denmark raised troops only to bully the Hanseatic towns in northern Germany into granting him toll rights over the North German rivers. But the Hanseatic League were the most important trading partner of the Dutch, who were of course alienated, and the Lower Saxons were rich too. At best, the Protestant monarchs sent money and allowed recruiters to enlist men in their territories. Population growth, bad harvest, and religious fervor were contributing factors why men entered their service in droves. To give but one example, according to the historian Peter Wilson, over 100,000 Englishmen and about 10% of the entire Scottish male population would fight in the war. Frederick had only two allies, and they were both in the east: the Duke of Jägerndorf in Silesia and Gábor Bethlen in Hungary. The latter was opposed by Bucquoy, while Jägerndorf was facing an ambitious young man by the name of Albrecht Wenzel Eusebius von Waldstein. After Bucquoy died in a skirmish, Jägerndorf and Bethlen managed to link up and besiege Pressburg. But because Bethlen was still lacking funds, the siege had to be abandoned. By the end of 1621, Bethlen had signed another truce and given the Hungarian crown back to Ferdinand. When Duke Jägerndorf was surrounded in Glatz in August of 1622, almost all of Frederick's supporters had surrendered. A couple of old and new characters stepped in and took up the mantle of Protestant paladin in Germany. Three of them stand out: Ernst of Mansfeld, Duke Christian the Younger of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel, and George Frederick of Baden-Durlach. George Frederick of Baden-Durlach saw an opportunity to improve his financial and political situation. His family had been bankrupted in the 1590s, and he was at odds with his more powerful Lutheran neighbor Württemberg. Moreover, George Frederick had supported Frederick V, and now feared that his defeat at White Mountain would expose him to unsympathetic imperial justice. Duke Christian of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel, administrator of Halberstadt, called the Mad Halberstädter, was probably a devoted Lutheran. He rallied his men under the banner "God's friend, Papist's foe," which suggests genuine confessional motives. However, another slogan for God and her meaning Frederick's wife, the Winter Queen, implies that he might have been drawn in by the chivalric dimension of the Palatinate cause. Although Christian likely harbored territorial ambitions, possibly at the cost of the Bishop of Paderborn, the fleeting and erratic nature of his involvement makes his true intentions difficult to discern. The most famous of the paladins was Ernst of Mansfeld. He had already fought the Habsburgs during the Bohemian Revolt. In May of 1621, he tried to break through to Jägerndorf, but failed, and subsequently occupied the Pilsen-Nuremberg road, entrenching his 13,000 men at Whitehouse. While he was facing an opposing force of 18,000 legionaries.
Alright, it's getting towards breakfast time for the baby, so I'm gonna go check that situation out. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, it's not gonna be next time. I hope to see you then. Take care.